Muy buenos días a todos. Agradecemos la asistencia de todos los aquí presentes y también reconocemos de forma especial a todos nuestros colaboradores y aliados que hacen posible que este evento se lleve a cabo. Es un gusto presentar a los distinguidos miembros de nuestro presidio. Licenciado Ricardo Mora, Director Ejecutivo de Technology Hub. Licenciado Jonathan Childress, Community Manager of Microsoft. Ingeniero Alejandra de la Vega, Secretaria de Innovación y Desarrollo Económico. Licenciado Armando Cavada, Presidente Municipal de Ciudad Juárez. Licenciado Javier Corral, Gobernador Constitucional del Estado de Chihuahua. Y por supuesto, un sincero agradecimiento a nuestros patrocinadores que de peculiar manera se han involucrado y comprometido para darle vida a una nueva manera de conectar mentes en nuestra querida frontera. Muchas gracias Microsoft, Bosch, Trastelco, Secretaría de Innovación y Desarrollo Económico del Estado de Chihuahua y de Hub of Human Innovation. Compañeros de medios de comunicación y amigos todos, muchas gracias por acompañarnos. Y bien, el día de hoy estamos reunidos para formalizar el arranque del primer programa en su clase que servirá para expandir la participación de empresas en la proveeduría que se brinda a grandes manufactureros y a la industria maquiladora en nuestra región. The Bridge Accelerator es un programa binacional para el desarrollo de proveedores en el cual se verán beneficiados tanto las empresas proveedoras de bienes y servicios como las receptoras de estos. El programa incluye la aplicación de interesantes metodologías de aprendizaje y formación, así como un premio de $25,000 al primer lugar. Invito a Ricardo Mora, Director Ejecutivo de Technology Hub, para que nos dé una reseña de esto.
Bueno. Aquí vaya. Ok. Muy bien. Bueno, pues bienvenidos todos. Mi nombre es Ricardo Mora, aquí de Technology Hub. Como menciona Rubén, este es un programa de desarrollo económico. Los que nos conocen aquí en Technology Hub, nosotros creamos desarrollo económico basado en innovación. ¿Qué quiere decir eso? Que hacemos las cosas diferentes. Los que no nos conocen el día de hoy, pues los invito a que vengan a ver todo lo que sucede en este espacio, que es un espacio donde se hacen conexiones con empresas, con emprendedores, con la industria. Como comentó Rubén, el nombre de este programa es The Bridge, y esa foto nos la encontramos hace un par de días, que era el puente de Ciudad Juárez, El Paso, en 1880. Estamos construyendo un nuevo puente, y la realidad para nosotros es bien importante poder cambiar nuestra sociedad y llevarla a otro nivel. El programa The Bridge, que quiere decir un puente, tiene 3 puntos importantes: la aceleración, que es binacional y que es intensivo. Sí quisiera aclarar que esto es una aceleradora. ¿Qué quiere decir? Que los equipos que van a participar por 12 semanas van a ser acelerados, no son compañías de startup. Estas compañías ya están actualmente dando servicio a la cadena de suministro. Inclusive tenemos una compañía grande que nos acompaña ahora, Genpack, es una compañía bastante grande que se inició con nosotros en el programa. En el tema de binacional, es el primer programa binacional que sucede de este tipo de aceleramiento. Lo estamos haciendo en conjunto con nuestro partner en El Paso, Hub of Human Innovation. Por aquí está Carlos Martínez Vela, quien lo representa, el CEO. Ahí está Carlos. Y por último, es un programa intensivo. Los equipos van a trabajar, van a poner arriba de 25 a 30 horas por semana para ir mejorando su propuesta de valor a partir de este programa. Y es bien importante para mí, como lo menciono cuando hemos tenido otros eventos, esto no es posible sin los patrocinadores. Y quiero dar nuevamente las gracias a Microsoft, a Bosch, a Transtelco y a la Secretaría de Innovación y Desarrollo Económico. Particularmente quisiera agradecer fuertemente y con un aplauso a Microsoft por su presencia en Ciudad Juárez y en El Paso y por levantar la primera mano en ayudarnos a hacer este programa una realidad. Gracias. Y por último, lo mencionaba Rubén, uno de los equipos ganadores, el que gane al final, se llevará $25,000 de capital semilla, que eso también a nadie le cae mal. JJ, te cedo la palabra.
Welcome. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Forgive me for giving my remarks in English. I'm still working on the Spanish, but Microsoft's mission is to empower every person and organization on the planet to achieve more. When I came into this role a year ago to represent El Paso, I knew our work would be incomplete if we did not consider the contributions Juarez has to the region. So this is a great program to be able to literally bridge the most important aspect of our economies, manufacturing, logistics, into providing jobs and opportunity to this region. The tools that we're looking to implement aren't just technology, it's ways of thinking. It's a cultural approach to think, how can we achieve more? It's, technology is just the tools. How you use them really will define the success and the future of this region. So it's great to see this is a future model where you have public support, you have private support, working with companies in a pre-competition and pre-cooperative agreement to build a better future for our community. So thank you all for coming. I'm looking forward to see the results of the companies attending, and looking forward to helping build a better bridge between our two communities here in the future. Thanks.
Y ahora invitamos al licenciado Armando Cavada para que nos brinde unas palabras.
Sí, gracias a todos, señor gobernador. Bienvenido y con el respeto de siempre a nuestra máxima autoridad en el Estado, a Technology Hub. Alejandra, gracias por la invitación. Seré breve. La verdad es que este es un tema en el que nos hemos involucrado, sobre todo con el sector maquilador, en esta gran oportunidad que hay para crecer en Ciudad Juárez. De los alrededor de $40,000 millones de proveeduría que se da al año en este sector, lamentablemente solamente cumplimos o cubrimos el 2% de proveeduría local. Ahí está ese mundo enorme de oportunidad para tratar de satisfacer todos los requisitos que nos pone la industria y poder ofrecer el mismo producto de calidad, seguramente con mejores costos, porque estamos aquí instalados desde donde se manufactura todo lo que se envía al mundo entero. Yo solamente les digo que como gobierno municipal estaremos muy atentos, como lo ha estado nuestra Dirección de Desarrollo Económico a través de Humberto Álvarez, para ser facilitadores. Son ya muchas las empresas que han decidido ampliarse en Ciudad Juárez y que nosotros les hemos dado facilidades fiscales, oportunidades fiscales que están en nuestra ley de ingresos. Lo seguiremos haciendo, seguiremos estando atentos a aquellos que quieran crecer o que se quieran instalar. Siempre el argumento está ahí en algún límite en cuanto a la generación de nuevos empleos, pero hay beneficios fiscales para todos aquellos que quieren instalarse para proveer. Así que estaremos atentos, apoyando obviamente este sector que es el número 1 en cuanto a la economía de Ciudad Juárez. Nos interesa que se fortalezca, que se eviten los riesgos. Estaremos atentos, como lo planteé en alguna reunión, para cualquier tipo de amenaza que se pudiera presentar desde otro sector, como ha ocurrido lamentablemente en otros municipios del país. Aquí obviamente haremos que prevalezca el Estado de Derecho y estaremos atentos a que el sector no sea afectado. Es la propuesta de parte de la Presidencia Municipal para todos ustedes. Gracias por la invitación. Buen día.
Muchas gracias por sus palabras. Ahora invitamos al licenciado Corral para que nos dé unas palabras.
Bueno, en primer lugar, pues, buen día a todas y a todos. Me da mucho gusto estar aquí. Hace un par de semanas fue cuando nos reunimos con Desarrollo Económico de Ciudad Juárez y conocimos de manera directa y detallada varios de los proyectos, de los programas que se tienen pensados impulsar y desarrollar para mejorar el crecimiento de nuestra economía, de nuestras empresas, la alianza estratégica entre los sectores académico, empresarial y público, gubernamental. Dentro de esos proyectos que se presentaron, apareció este proyecto, The Bridge, y fue precisamente Ricardo quien explicó los objetivos, los alcances, las metas de este importante programa. Efectivamente, creo que es el primer proyecto binacional que busca integrar empresas de ambos países para generar un mejor aprovechamiento del conglomerado que en Ciudad Juárez existe en la industria manufacturera. Pues siempre lo hemos platicado, siempre lo hemos discutido, ya lo dijo Armando, tenemos un porcentaje pues realmente mínimo, menor de proveeduría. Desde hace muchos años estamos ahí entre el 2 y el 4 y no despegamos. Se trata de iniciar empresas, sí, echarlas a andar, incubar empresas para ese propósito, pero ahora este proyecto pues tiene un valor agregado, un valor adicional muy importante. Aquí ya no se trata solo de incubar o de echar a andar empresas, sino de acelerar a las que ya están, a las que conocen la logística, el funcionamiento, la operación de la industria manufacturera de exportación y empujarlas a su crecimiento, capacitarlas y sobre todo, pues como bien se dijo aquí, generar que se aproveche la oportunidad que significa el mercado de Ciudad Juárez. Yo quiero felicitarlos por esta iniciativa, estamos muy satisfechos de poder apoyar proyectos como este, obviamente a Microsoft, a Transtelco, a Bosch, que son patrocinadores también de este proyecto, felicitarlos por el apoyo, el respaldo. Lo vamos a seguir haciendo, todo lo que podamos hacer para incrementar la cadena de valor en Ciudad Juárez. Vamos a seguir apoyando a este proyecto y a felicitar esta unión entre hubs del Paso y de Juárez. Eso es muy importante, que esa experiencia, que todo ese bagaje que está aquí acumulado en estos centros se pueda ahora dirigir a directivos, a staff de las empresas para acelerar el crecimiento de medianas, pequeñas y grandes empresas. Así que sin más, pues mi presencia aquí nada más es para reiterar nuestro apoyo y felicitarlos por esta extraordinaria iniciativa. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, licenciado. Y muchas gracias a todos los miembros del Presidium por sus palabras. Ahora los invitamos para que pasen a nuestro tradicional toque de campana en señal de la celebración del inicio de The Bridge. Por favor, si nos pueden acompañar aquí en la esquina. Para los que no saben, me están preguntando qué significa la campana. Technology Hub estableció cuando abrió las puertas al público que cada vez que un hito se presentara o algo representativo para cualquiera de nosotros, se iba a tocar la campana en señal de alegría y en señal de celebración. Entonces, este programa de The Bridge, primero en su clase, creemos que va a ser un programa muy exitoso aquí en la frontera, en la región. Por eso es que vamos a tocar la campana. Entonces, todos pueden, por favor, agarrar la campana y al mismo tiempo, nada más es para los lados, por favor, no es jalárnosla. Y la vamos a sonar unas 10 veces, ¿ok? A la 1, a las 2 y a las 3. Así es, Alejandra. Muchas gracias. Se declara inaugurado The Bridge. Bueno, despedimos al gobernador constitucional del estado de Chihuahua. Muchas gracias, licenciado Corral, por acompañarnos. Licenciado Cavada, muchas gracias por acompañarnos. Alejandra de la Vega, muchas gracias por acompañarnos. Bueno, y al resto de la audiencia, les pedimos por favor que se queden porque tenemos una conferencia magna y les pedimos que tomen asiento, por favor. Me complace invitarlos a nuestra primer conferencia a cargo de André Marqui. Él tiene una licenciatura en Ciencias Cognitivas en la Universidad de Rochester y una maestría en Administración en la Escuela de Negocios Haas. Fue director ejecutivo del Grupo de Innovación y Aceleración en la Universidad de Berkeley. Ha entrenado a cientos de startups y miles de emprendedores y corporaciones innovadoras. Actualmente brinda asesoría a grandes corporativos como Intel, Caterpillar, Bosch y HP. Sin más preámbulo, con ustedes, André Marqui. André, the microphone is yours.
Try it. Is this working? So, like JJ, I too have to apologize that I'm speaking in English. I think my Spanish is even worse than his, is my guess. So, welcome. So, I was here about 3 years ago, and it's just amazing. I want to thank Ricardo and the staff and everybody who's worked on making what was impressive 3 years ago completely amazing. So thank you for inviting me. They asked me here to give you kind of a global perspective on innovation and how innovation is changing and how, if you want to be part of what's happening in the future, how you might want to change your thinking. So even though I work at UC Berkeley, I'm not an academic, I'm actually a serial entrepreneur, and I've been lucky in my career. I've had 3 companies that have done public offerings. Most recently, I started a biotechnology company that has a drug for Candida auris. I don't know if you've been reading about these serious fungal infections in hospitals that can't be cured. So we have the only drug in phase 2 clinical testing right now that can actually cure, or we hope, we're in testing, so we don't have that proven, but I'm obviously very excited about that. And about 6 years ago, they invited me to run the Entrepreneurship Center at UC Berkeley. That's where I graduated, and UC Berkeley is the top public university in the world. For those of you who are into startups and innovation, you may not know this, but UC Berkeley graduates actually raised more venture capital and more rounds of venture capital than any other university in the world. So some people think other universities generate more entrepreneurs who raise more money, but it's not true. And we're a public university, so we're sponsored by the state of California. So I think one of the things that's very exciting about working at UC Berkeley is we're really one of the #1 engines of social mobility in the state of California, and that's a really makes it a great place to work. So we really changed our entrepreneurship program pretty dramatically, and I'll talk a little bit about that when I got there. And what I've been doing for the past 2 years is really focusing on corporate innovation. So we really changed the scale and the scope of what we do in entrepreneurship at Berkeley, and we've had many, many more successful startups because of that. Now we're changing how corporations innovate in a big way, and I'm very excited about that. And I think that has some lessons for you who are entrepreneurs, suppliers, working with large companies, if you want to co-create with large companies, or if you really want to create global innovations that work on your own. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. Now, corporations need innovation. If you are a supplier or someone who works with large companies, I just want to let you know from my perspective of talking to many, many large companies around the world is they are desperate for real innovation. And I think this diagram shows it perfectly, which is if you look at the Fortune 1000, the 1,000 largest companies in the world, and you look at that list in 1973, and you look at that list in 1983, about 350 new companies on the list over 10 years. Okay, so 35% chance you're going to get knocked out of the Fortune 1000 in a 10-year period. I think you will notice between 2003 and 2013, there is now a 70% chance, if you are a large company, you're going to get knocked out of the Fortune 1000. Now, why is that true? It's a really interesting question. I'm not sure anyone's actually answered that question, but I think when we see the speed at which we can create new products, we can outsource work, we can get on social media and sell globally, we're all connected to each other through our smartphones. And we have a team in China, and they sell all through WeChat. They sell industrial equipment through WeChat. So they don't have to create stores and a dealer network or anything like that. They have a warehouse and a van and WeChat, right? And that's it. And now they are a logistics company that is scaling across China with cell phones and vans and cheap warehouses. I mean, it's really amazing to see what can happen. But this is a big challenge for large companies because large companies are used to doing things at scale, so doing a lot of them, but they're not used to changing quickly. And as suppliers and entrepreneurs, one of the things that's really changing is your ability to help large companies go faster. And that's really what I'm going to talk about. Now, I happen to have done one of these myself. So in 2004, I co-created a business unit at Eli Lilly. And Eli Lilly is about the 8th largest pharmaceutical company in the world. So they're about a $60 billion a year revenue business. And we created a group called Chorus. And instead of having 20 or 30 person teams developing a drug, where everybody had all the expertise needed to develop a drug, we had basically 2-person teams. And then we outsourced all the work to our suppliers. So if we needed a drug manufactured, we outsourced it. If we needed a clinical trial run, we outsourced it. And so we created a much closer relationship with our suppliers. In fact, it was very funny running Chorus because normally the big company is the slow one and the supplier is the fast one. When we were able to get this process down to having 2-person teams, we were the fast one and our suppliers were too slow. Like they weren't used to like getting a contract back in a week because they were used to like, oh, we've got a couple months, the contract, it's going to take the lawyers at the company a long time to get this done or whatever. And we'd just be like, well, where's the contract? We need to get the work done. And so they had to actually change their process to work with our business unit. So by having small teams, we made decisions in the small. So we could make decisions very quickly. We didn't need big committees. It didn't have to kind of go back through. And so we could actually operate 3 times faster. So clinical proof of concept takes about 3 years at a pharma company, and it's about half the risk of developing a new product. Meaning if your clinical proof of concept, you put the drug into patients and it works, that means there's at least a 50% chance you're actually going to take that drug to market and generate revenue, right? Because that's what companies need. They need revenue. So we could do that about 3 times faster and for 1/6 of the cost. And so that was a pretty exciting way. And what else was interesting is by having this rapid, lightweight process where we could test more drugs, for the ones that didn't look promising, we just stopped developing them. And we didn't have to have 8 committee meetings to do that. We could do it more quickly. And so we actually, if you look historically, have about a 70% higher chance of the drugs that went through Chorus of being successes in the marketplace, which is pretty interesting, right? Because you might think the old traditional process where you check every box, you dot every I, is going to be better. The products that go through that process are going to be better. That's not necessarily true. Now, what was the problem with Chorus? Well, the other good news about Chorus is Eli Lilly has outperformed its pharmaceutical peers by about 30 basis points over the last 12 years, which is how long Chorus has been doing this. The bad news is nobody else was able to do this. Not one other pharmaceutical company, despite all the advantages of Chorus, was able to create its own Chorus business unit. Fascinating. To me, this reminds me of when American car companies went to Japan to learn about lean production. Were American companies able to tour Japanese factories and then immediately change their factories to do lean production? No. I don't think so. No, good, okay. Great. So large companies want innovation. They want your innovation. What is hard about innovation? What is the number one problem? Like if you're a venture capitalist, what is your number one problem when someone shows you a new innovation? Customers. Let me give you an example. So this is from a program we ran with Intel. So Intel runs programs where they co-create with startups. So take the latest Intel products, run accelerators, and we've run a number of these for Intel, where startups work with Intel products. Okay, so this was one of these products, and hopefully this video works. So take a look. Oh, hopefully we'll get some audio. Oh. Up here, let's start over again. So that's the CEO of Intel there. Nice. So this was actually a reality TV show we did with Intel by the producers of Shark Tank. So we got to go to Hollywood. Very exciting. Okay, so the Internet of Herds. You're an investor. Should you invest in the Internet of Herds? Who's gonna put money into the Internet of Herds? Well, fair warning, someone did, because they've actually raised venture capital, and I think they're actually doing okay. But this shows the problem is someone comes to you with an innovation, and is it going to work? Is it not going to work? Who knows, right? And this is the number one problem in innovation is people do things like run idea competitions and things like that and says, that's a great idea. We should fund that idea. Well, innovation simply doesn't work that way. Nobody knows the answer. And if you want to innovate and you want to create an innovation that's big enough and has enough impact to really be global, then you have to recognize this, that nobody can pick winners, and there's all kinds of good data about this. So if you're an angel investor, and occasionally I invest in companies, 7% of the companies generate 75% of the financial returns, right? And usually if you're an angel investor, you are an expert in the field, right? Like, if you're, usually your angel investors, if you're in the pharmaceutical business, they're in the pharmaceutical business. If you're in the manufacturing business, they're in the manufacturing business. So in theory, they know your business, and they're terrible at it. Most people don't know this, but only 12% of venture capital firms actually make more money than the stock market, which has been a problem for venture capital firms who try to raise more money. This is if you do early stage investing, right? So if you invest in early stage startups, hard, okay. Perhaps the top accelerator in Silicon Valley they started doing sort of classes. They do 20 or 30 startups every year. Now they're doing about 200, 250 startups a year for this reason. They made 940 investments to get 8 startups worth $1 billion. By the way, that's not 8 startups generating $1 billion in revenue. I just want to be completely clear, or making $1 billion a year in profit. That is simply ones who their stock value is $1 billion, and we all know that can go either way. I had to bring this up because we are, in fact, in the Steve Jobs auditorium. You might not have noticed, but this is the Steve Jobs auditorium. So I had to point out, everyone, I get this all the time, Andre, what about Steve Jobs? He was a genius. And it's like, well, it's true. He had the Apple II, that was a success. He had the iPod, which was a success, and the iPhone, which was a success. Okay. But everybody forgets the Apple III, which sold about 50,000. The Lisa, I actually got to use a Lisa once. The Macintosh, I have a slide I show my students with Windows and PC market share. I don't know if JJ's still here from Microsoft, but he can be very proud of what Microsoft did to the Macintosh. But I have a slide that shows market share between PC and the Macintosh. And if you're on a lower resolution projector, you can't even see the line that shows how small Macintosh's market share is. And oh, by the way, what did the board of directors do after Steve Jobs introduced the Macintosh? What did they do to Steve Jobs? They fired him. Okay. And whatever. The Pixar, did you know Pixar was a computer company? Yes. Some people do, yes. There are people who actually know when Steve Jobs invested in Pixar, it made computers. And how many of you own a Pixar computer today? Okay, good. So, okay. And again, this is what's hard about innovation. I'm going to help come up with some answers, so hopefully all of you who want to innovate are not depressed right now, that even a true genius like Steve Jobs, and he is a genius, had more failures than successes. But that's really the lesson, is knowing that you're going to have more failures than successes, what do you do about this, okay? So I call it agile business model innovation, but what it means is many of you do agile product development, right? It's like, how can we sort of understand what our customers want more quickly, change our product more quickly, update our product more regularly. So I call this agile business model innovation because it's about new business models. It's about selling things differently, different customers, different ways of getting revenue from customers, that kind of stuff, and I'll talk a little bit more about this. But if you want to overcome the fact that no one can pick winners, you just have to test a lot of ideas. There is no substitute. By the way, the pharmaceutical industry works this way. So if a drug works in animals, there is less than a 5% chance you are ever going to generate any revenue from that drug, right? And so pharmaceutical companies run a pipeline. You do lots of early testing on drugs. The ones that are most promising, you move into human testing, and you have multiple stages of human testing, and it runs like a big funnel. So you have to test lots of ideas. Now, not only do you have to test lots of ideas, but you actually have to test them. And this is where most things fall down, right? If you run an idea competition and you say, my employees, they're going to submit 400 ideas, and we're going to have our smartest executives pick the top 5. Is that picking winners? I always get yeses and nos on that, which I find interesting. That is picking winners, because you have not actually tested any of those ideas, right? You didn't go out and test, is this solve an important customer problem? You didn't build a prototype and tested whether the customer was happy and it really did, met their expectations. You didn't test how the customer wants to pay you. You didn't test all the different components of the business model. Once you have run all of those tests, then you know. But the point is, you don't know anything until you run all those tests. So unless the validation has been done, you don't know. So you really have to run a process, and because most ideas are bad ideas, the key is, what happens to your great idea? Most likely, you're wrong, right? You're almost certainly wrong. Now, maybe you're mostly right, and I've been lucky enough, many of my startups, we've been mostly right. But it's always changed. Every time it's changed. And what's great about working with hundreds of startups a year is everybody's wrong. It's amazing. But if you can fix it fast enough, you might actually find something good. If you do this, then winners will come out the other end. And one way to look at this is to think of Silicon Valley. So how many startups do you think there are in Silicon Valley, roughly? I don't think anyone knows, but roughly. Is it 5,000? 10,000? So my best guess from a bunch of different data sources is there are 30 to 40,000 startups in Silicon Valley. And how many of those do you hear about? Shockingly few. So we're just a giant testing machine, right? And so I think if you want to be an innovator, the question is, how can you be part of a giant testing machine? That's the key. Okay. That means a lot of things people traditionally do in innovation, and you may be part of programs like this, and I apologize if I offend anyone by saying this, but these mean you're not testing a lot of ideas and you're not really testing them. So number one, when I got to Berkeley, we taught our students how to write business plans. That's crazy. It was like 2012. Every business school in the US taught students how to write business plans. Insane. Now I think we're down to about 10 or 11, the 3,000 business schools that teach business plan writing. A business plan, you can do all the planning you want. When you reach customers, once you encounter reality, all your plans are going to change. I hate to say this, because of course I teach executive education at Berkeley, but coming and touring Silicon Valley does not help you test a lot of ideas systematically. Now you might see other people testing ideas systematically, but that doesn't help you do it, okay? So there's nothing wrong with learning, but it doesn't help you. Idea competitions, we already talked about that. Trying to pick the best idea doesn't work if you're really trying to innovate. Incubators. I see companies and they'll have an incubator and they'll have 5 teams. Well, if 95% of ideas, 95% of ideas are bad ideas, what are the odds in any one year if you've got 5 startups that one of them is going to be good? Under 50%. What's more interesting, and again, I apologize if I offend anyone here, is they will let the startups be there for a year. Why is that crazy? So I come in January. I'm talking to customers. I'm testing my product with my customers. It's March. Nobody has any interest in what I'm doing whatsoever. I'm never going to get paid. I'm never going to be able to make money at this startup. What am I going to do for the rest of the 10 months, right? I guess I could come up with a new idea. But the point is, a lot of times, people let you sit there with a bad idea, and they do not relentlessly push you to change it, to make it better, to find where the real problem is, to make it better. And so that's really the big change in what we've done at Berkeley, is we don't let people sit there anymore. It's like, you have to be moving, and you have to be learning. And usually you learn it's a bad idea, but that's fine, because if you can let go of a bad idea, you can move on to the next thing. Okay. Another thing people do is we're going to mentor some startups and we're going to see innovation happen. Again, that's the difference between a traditional production line and a lean startup, a lean production system line, right? They're organized differently, people are trained differently, their interactions with their suppliers are different. It is a completely different system. Mentoring a startup does not change the system you work in. Does that make sense? Corporate venture capital, again, I apologize if it's fine to invest in startups, there's nothing wrong with that, but it doesn't make your company innovate faster. Does everyone understand that? It's like taking your money, investing it in startups does not make your company more innovative. Anything where you're trying to pick winners early. Okay. This is where T-Hub, and that is why I love this space, because you are part of an ecosystem. So you get to go out and see what's working and what's not working. And if your startup isn't working, you might learn something from somebody else who sees what is working, or you may talk to someone at a company or whatever. But being part of an ecosystem where you are constantly learning is critically important. And ideally, it's one that pushes you to get out of the building, to learn, and we'll talk more about this process, but it's constantly pushing you to move forward and to learn and decide whether you should keep doing this or not. Okay. What's really cool is you can change quickly. The world is changing very quickly. So if you want to be an innovator, now is an exciting time. You might be a tad too early, but I think corporations are changing really quickly. So if you look at what we did at Berkeley, when I got there, we had 12 teams in a one-room incubator. 3 years later, we're running 260, 270 startups across multiple continents, because it turns out this sort of coaching, iteration, testing process, you can do mostly online. So, and that's the Intel program I showed you. I'll show you some other examples of that. Started a corporate innovation group about 2 years ago. We do a lot of work with Bosch globally. Hopefully we have some people from Bosch in the room. But we started with 10 teams, and within a year and a half, we might actually get up to 160 internal startups for Bosch this year, globally. So literally every geography, Asia, Europe, Latin America, Central America, North America, Australia. No, we don't have any startups on Antarctica yet. But the point is that Bosch could really change the scale at which they ran startups in a year and a half. And this is where I think you're going to see a big change. And that's why it's exciting to be an entrepreneur working with large companies right now, because this is starting to happen at other companies as well. What's interesting about, and I'm going to talk more about how this process works, is you can mix, like just to give Bosch an example, you can do purely internal teams where it's Bosch employees. You can do teams where they're co-creating with startups. So that was what the Intel program was, right? Take Intel technology, Intel engineers, match them to startups, co-create completely new products together. We do a lot with social ventures at Berkeley. So how do you create a repeatable, scalable business that has real revenue and real customers, but does social good as well? We're very excited about that. And then true co-creation teams. So now we're running things where corporations are co-creating with their suppliers, with their partners, and literally people from the partners and the parent company sit on the same team. So it's not, hey, we come visit you, maybe you can do something for us. It's like, look, we're on the same team. If this works, we will succeed together. And again, this is a big change in how people think. I'll talk a little bit more about the process. We don't have the only process, but it can be done online, it can be done globally. The teams don't all have to be in the same place. And really the key is more than half the ideas, the teams themselves say it's a no-go. That's what we use for, you figure out you're never going to make money at this, you're not going to get paid for it, the customer doesn't really solve an important problem, it's not going to be a big market, whatever. But within 8 weeks, teams can typically figure out, half of them, more than half of them figure out we shouldn't continue with this idea. Very exciting. So I think I run the only startup accelerator on the planet, University Startup Accelerator. It's our Berkeley Launch Accelerator. It's our student startup accelerator. And in the past 5 years, we've had $200 million valuation companies come out of that. We've had multiple tens of millions of dollars valuation companies come out of that. Every single demo day, and we just had our demo day 2 weeks ago, more than half the teams say, not, here's my amazing business and you should invest in it. They say, here's what I learned about this business and why I'm not going to pursue it after I graduate. I run the only demo day I have ever seen that does that, because I'm crazy. But it's the truth, right? What the students find out in the 4 months of our Startup Accelerator, this is not a great idea. I should go get a job, you know, go work at Google or Facebook or whatever after I graduate, but I should not go start this company. And that is very powerful. And I am very excited about that because I think we're teaching our students the reality of how it works. And there is nothing wrong with that. By the way, I showed you my little CV there at the beginning. I will tell you, I have probably worked for 3 times more companies than I showed on my CV. And I consult for little ones, and I invest in little startups. Like everybody in Silicon Valley who's smart is sort of doing 2 or 3 things at once. Why? Why are you always sort of doing 2 or 3 things at once? Because whatever you're working on, you might figure out at any point it's just not going to work for whatever reason, and you need to go to number 2. And so that's just, like I said, this discipline of killing things, critically important. And that's what we're bringing to large companies, by the way. For Bosch to go through, people come in with ideas. Some of them have won internal competitions. Some of them are funded by their business units, and in 8 weeks they go back to their boss and they're just like, nope, wasn't a good idea. That's a big culture change. That's a big culture change, but it's coming. Okay, so if you want to be an entrepreneur, so no one can pick winners, you've got to be relentless. If it's not going to work, you got to stop and try something else. Then the question is, if you really want to create value and you want to create something that's big enough to be global, where should you look? Like, how do you know your idea is not big enough or you're focused on the wrong area? It's a really interesting question. We're going to do a little exercise here. I'm going to have you guys do some future visioning here as we go. But one of the things that's been really interesting is there's actually a really good, if slightly boring book called Black Swan Farming Using the Cost of Delay. And does everyone know Maersk, the shipping line, right? So they're the ones that move containers on ships and trucks and everything all over the world, so a global shipping concern. And they looked at all of their IT projects. So, right, they have to do all these projects. Are we going to update our customer invoices? Are we going to create a new feature so you can, see where your container is on your smartphone? So all of these projects. And they didn't really have a good way of evaluating what were the valuable projects and what were the projects that really weren't adding any value. We're just going to spend money, we're going to spend some time, but ultimately the company is not better off when we're done this project. Because of course, like every company, like every entrepreneur, your to-do list is way too long, right? You can't do everything on your to-do list, so the question is, what do you do? And so they came up with this valuation method. And what they figured out is the top 25% of their projects are 10,000 times more valuable than the bottom 25%. 10,000 times. So they do not do many of the projects in the bottom 25%. But I thought this was really good learning if you're an entrepreneur and you're working on a good idea. Are you working on an idea that's likely to be in the top 25% of ultimate value delivered? Or are you likely to be in the bottom 25%? And what I thought was really interesting is it reinforced some things that I've seen with startups, which is the number one thing you want to do is you want to help find new or unserved customers. So good examples are like computers, right? Computers used to be the size of rooms. They cost tens of millions of dollars. No one could have one. Someone figured out how to cut that down to like $1 million, $500,000. Those were mini computers. The era of the mini computer was very short. Only people my age even probably ever saw one. But that meant people who didn't have tens of millions of dollars could afford, $1 million or $500,000 computer. Then we had personal computers, right? Those were thousands of dollars, maybe $10,000 when they came out. More people could have those. Those were very popular in offices. And of course, now we all have supercomputers in our pocket. And if you go to India, and you're in a rural village in India, you will see people with very inexpensive versions of these. But nonetheless, it is a version of this. And so now billions of people have these in their pocket. And every time that happened, that created whole new markets, right? And obviously, the smartphone is creating, I'm in the home of Uber, Lyft. I can walk out of my house in San Francisco, and I can hop on 3 different scooters. I have so many modes of transportation when I walk out my door, it's ridiculous. I do not own a car because I live in San Francisco and it's just, it's annoying to park it in my garage. Like I literally can have someone show up in front of my house in 2 minutes and take me somewhere. Like it's cheaper. So if you can find customers who aren't served or who are new to the company, like the company does not have these customers yet, that can be really valuable. Why? Why are new customers often really valuable? Why do you think? I like to think it's because of competition, right? You're not competing yet. Like if you're Coke and you're Pepsi, it's very expensive for Coke to steal from Pepsi and Pepsi to steal from Coke. But if someone doesn't have a smartphone and you're suddenly like, hey, you could read your news, you could message your neighbors, and this is cheap enough for you to afford, well, right now you don't have any competition, okay? So that's why new unserved customers are often. And so again, when you're thinking about your business and thinking about what should I be offering as a supplier offering this bigger company, one thing to think about is could I get this company new customers they've never had, new sources of revenue. Interesting. Another one is more revenue from existing customers. So, can you add features, things? They already have these customers, you can get more money out of them. In this day and age, keeping customers can be very important. And certainly if you are in a business that makes hardware, like you make something physical, the cost of those physical objects is going down and down and down. So the amount of money that's being made is going down and down and down. The amount of profit that's being made is going down and down and down. And so often you're looking for business models where you can get more money, or you can simply keep customers, keep them around, okay? Interestingly enough, and again, the Marqui project showed this, is things that sort of reduce costs or avoid costs, they're fine. There's nothing wrong with that, but it just tends to be a lot weaker in terms of really generating a big, valuable business than these other things. So again, I'm not saying there are no businesses in reducing cost, but it's not what I would focus on if you're trying to innovate. I try to focus on, are there new or unserved customers? Is there a way to get more revenue from existing customers? Or if they're losing customers, is there a way to keep those customers by changing up what they're doing? Those are the things I would really focus on if you want to be big and global. If you just want to do one project for someone and save them some money, that's fine. But that's a totally different business from innovation. Now, what that means is you'll notice most of these things are about customers, the people who are paying. So that means even though you might be a supplier deeper down in the supply chain, you need to understand the end customers of the people you work for. And I think this can often be a challenge because you're used to kind of being in your, we call it stay in your lane, right? You're kind of used to being in your lane. And I think if you want to have a bigger breakthrough, if you want to add more value, you got to think about, is there a way you can get out of your lane? Can you find a way into the company where you're adding to the future strategy of the company? Let me give you an example. I'll use the Tesla example because I love this. So you know Tesla cars, right? They have cameras, they have computers, and one of the things I notice is I think it's about every 2 months you sort of see like social media and the news and everyone will be up like, oh, Tesla has pet mode, right? Pet mode, right? The camera looks in your car. If it sees your dog or your cat is in your car after you park it, lowers the windows, turns on the AC, puts up a little sign that says, you know, I know my pet's in the car. Actually, I don't remember what it says, right? Pet mode, blows up all over the place. Then the next month, or 2 months later, Sentry mode. Oh, here's a photo of someone like trying to break into your Tesla, right? That your Tesla captured in real time and you got a live update on your phone and they couldn't break into your Tesla and all this stuff. And then 2 months later, it's the next thing. And it's sort of like, why does this happen every 2 months? Like, it's because the genius of the people at Tesla is this is not a feature. This is a marketing program, right? I mean, how many of you leave your pets in your car, right? Would you not buy a particular car because it didn't have pet mode? Of course you wouldn't. But the point is, the brilliant people at Tesla are like, how can we get publicity? I mean, I actually don't know if any of this is true, by the way, but I've been around Silicon Valley long enough. I'm very paranoid that this is true. I mean, not paranoid. I'm like, this is awesome. They are saving Tesla hundreds of millions of dollars in advertising, right? Tesla does not have to go buy a Super Bowl commercial for every person in America to read a story about a Tesla. All they got to do is dog mode, okay? So that's what I mean about you got to start thinking a bit differently about who your customers are and what value is. Because I don't see the other car companies doing this, and this would be something that suppliers could 100% enable. Right? I mean, this is absolutely something. It's like, we could enable your marketing programs with all these cool features. And again, it's a little bit untraditional, but it's tremendously valuable. Tremendously valuable. And again, I don't know if this is something suppliers could ever do, if this is a good business model, whatever. But it's just a way of sort of trying to shake up your thinking a little bit in terms of what is value, what's actually valuable to the large company, what are they really looking for. And part of this is just about what is changing in customer behavior. right? Because where people are changing, they're spending more time staring at their phones, they're using different kinds of transportation. These are all opportunities. And so this is where we're going to do a little exercise. And I'll just sort of show you, I call this sort of validation-driven strategy. But it's like, what is changing in customers? And what does that mean? Sorry about this. What does that mean about what you could get out of them? OK. So let's talk a little bit about, the first thing is when you're starting to think about your idea. Yes, sir.
I have one quick question.
Sure.
On what you said about 2 minutes ago. But it's planned innovation. What about planned obsolescence?
Meaning you're forcing planned, so say it again.
About
innovation
dogma,
versus obsolescent, right?
About dogma.
Yeah,
and all
yeah.
These are planned innovations, planned, stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
So what about those things that are planned to be obsolete?
Planned to be planned to be obsolete.
Exactly. So, I mean, it's still part of the equation, wouldn't it?
I do think. Well, I mean, I think planned obsolescence is an important part of the equation, right? Which is, people expect things to continuously get better. Like, I think it's an amazing human expectation that we always expect things are going to be better, right? It's like, our phones are going to get better. Our food is going to get better. Our car is going to, like, that is our expectation. When things are just fine and they stay the same, we're mostly still unhappy, which is an unfortunate thing. So I think planned obsolescence is it's an interesting way about looking at where are people going to change their behavior, right? Like, where are their expectations going to be completely different? And again, and I think this is where, again, large companies have a challenge, which is their product cycles are so long, right? It might take you 3 years from deciding you're going to do something to actually getting it on the market, that a lot of things can happen in between where people's tastes change, their expectations change and everything, and that ends up being a huge problem. So I think that's a really important thing to think about as well. And that's something we can actually think about in our exercise here with validation-driven strategy, because it really comes to this question. You're like, okay, Andre, 7% of angel investments lead to 75% of the returns. Well, I'm only one person. We're only one team. Like, we can't do 100 startups. So how are we going to be successful as a team? And so I think really this gets to the question of really trying to frame what you are doing in terms of trends and everything. And one way I found to be really helpful, and hopefully you can read this at the back, is this was an example for sort of a random set of products. But what I did here was, and I guess you can't see what's in the middle, so people are changing what sales channels they use. So one of the things I've seen with startups all over the world is big companies have dealer networks, they have service networks. People just see stuff on social media, right? Like, they don't go into the store anymore, right? Huge problem in the United States. Shopping malls are going like this, right? So people have just changed how they like to shop. And it's very interesting, because I'll just go back to Tesla again. In most states in the United States, they don't actually have dealers. Like, they don't have physical dealers. That's a whole other discussion. But so people are changing how they do sales channels. The middle box, which has magically disappeared, was supposed to be about kind of Internet of Things, right? You've got cheap chips. You can put cheap chips onto tools and equipment and all this stuff. Manufacturing equipment, whatever, great. So now we can have sensors, we can have these sort of cheap measurement, computing, whatever. That's fine, but that doesn't solve customer problems, right? So this is just the other thing to be aware of when you're innovating, is people will be like, Andre, blockchain. In fact, we have a blockchain academy at Berkeley, which is great because somebody put money and our students are learning, but I get vaguely annoyed about it because blockchain is not something that gets you new customers or new sources of rev, right? I mean, all those things that I said about how they add value, come at it from what's changing and then which customers you're targeting. So I just happen to have here, we have amateurs, people in emerging markets, and professionals. So that would just be an example of 3 different segments. They might need new things, right? And people in emerging markets don't have as much money as people in established markets, and so the products they want, the value they're seeking might be different. But there might be some overlap, right? Like, you might be able to sort of rent things to people because they don't want to pay for hardware anymore. They just want it to show up, right? This is what's happening in transportation, is I don't want to buy transportation. I just want to rent it. And interestingly enough, we're seeing that sort of rental model for transportation working in, existing markets and in emerging markets, right? And so some of these business models apply. So what we're going to do is a little exercise, and hopefully I can get a volunteer, is for your business idea, could you sketch out your little matrix? I'm more than happy to help. Does someone want to do this? Is someone willing to share their idea? And we can do a little exercise on this? Come on. I'm nice. I'm nice. I'm going to make you look like a star up here. Any of the startups? Come on up. All right. All right. Thank you, sir, for brave. Come on up. No. So first of all, tell us kind of what area you're working in, what your idea is. Here, actually, why don't I give you a microphone? Do we? I can talk. Just so I think they're recording, so it's useful.
Yeah. Oh, so we're going to be recording.
We can tell them not to record it.
No, it's okay. Okay, hi everybody. My name is Daniel Diaz. I come from Genpact. I actually currently work as a global implementation manager. What that means in regular English is that I take care of several deployments. We do an engagement with the customer. We seek and discover what are their approaches and their solutions that they need. And then we come up with a strategy that can be replicated throughout the world using a standard model that can help monitor the performance.
Nice.
And then we do the implementation where we focus in regards to implementing according to a certain methodology and keeping in mind the several metrics that we, let's say, evaluate as a checkpoint. So the ideas that we have are currently around automation, how to speed up, let's say, deployments, and also implement new technologies for document ingestions, which means, plain English, when you send an invoice to your, let's say, to your supplier, then the supplier comes back with the product and you close that cycle right away.
Nice.
Basically.
Yeah. So you're trying to make things go faster.
Yeah.
So how do you think about different kinds of customers? Like if you're going to do the equivalent of this diagram, just say, do you have sort of different industries or different customer segments that you target?
Yes, actually we divide those customers between verticals, which is, for example, medical and insurance, and then capital investments, and then you have the other real estate, manufacturing, and all the other segments.
So why don't you do that, is do your vertical. We're going to do some brainstorming. We're going to try to get you some new businesses.
All right.
Right here with the collective power of the audience.
So then insurance and medical.
Or actually do medical down here, because then we're going to have some, we're going to try to do it this way, where it's like which market and then which changes are coming. Oh, no, you can do insurance down, then do medical there, yeah.
Okay.
But we'll just try to replicate.
Insurance. Got it.
Perfect. Now, what sorts of changes? So some of the examples I had up here were just, sales channel changes, people wanting service business models. Do you have sort of themes around how your customers are changing? Like, are they doing things differently?
Yes, they are. For example, in the insurance segment, one of the things that we have noticed over the years is that people usually felt really comfortable filling out a paper application, sending it via email, and then getting their reply back. The way that has shifted, as everybody knows, is that you go into a portal, you fill out the information, it automatically gives you a validation right there, so you don't have to wait for that paper to reach that office and have that validation. So that's the way it's shifting. People want their confirmations quicker. They want to know that they're doing the right thing, and they're doing it once and the first time right. In other words.
So they sort of expect speed.
Speed and accuracy, yeah.
Interesting. Do you think that goes across? So why don't you just put that as like a theme?
Speed.
Expect speed, right?
Okay.
Because this is interesting, because what you can start to do as you think about these ideas is, like I said, is it new customers, new revenue? Is it more revenue from existing customers? Or is it simply keeping customers? Because it's interesting, right? If you look at the competition,
Yes.
if everybody's speeding up, you have to speed up simply just to stay in the game, right? And that's sort of the third.
Yeah.
Okay, so speed, then do you have one or two other themes? Just thinking about change.
Yes, around change, besides speed, let's say they want more benefit for their costs. Let's say more bang for the buck.
More bang for the buck. And how do they actually measure, or what's your risk, right? Because it's sort of like what I say about my cell phone bill. It's like I always think my cell phone bill is high, but I never change cell phone companies. So that's what I call perfect pricing.
Yeah, there is.
Does everybody get my joke, right? It's like it's expensive, but it's not so expensive that I change, and so they're getting as much money as they can out of me without me switching. So whoever does the pricing over at T-Mobile, good job, good job. So
They certainly got you there. Well, for us, it depends. It's directly proportional to the complexity. In other words, don't want to get too technical, but for example, sometimes we get a dump from the customer system of their ERP or their system of records, and that helps us to cross-check the form that is delivered to us. So by having this form captured and the extract from the customer system, we actually do a binding of these two informations.
Got it.
So, in other words, it is validation of information, the trustworthy of information, and the data privacy. Very, very critical.
Interesting. So that is a whole trend. So essentially, they're willing to share more information with you to get more value.
Exactly.
So that, yeah, why don't you try that one? Because that one's interesting, right? Because that's a hypothesis everybody has, is like, we're going to do AI, or we're going to do, machine learning, or whatever it is, by sharing data. And so one of the questions is, with privacy and everything, how can you show enough value? Because trust me, Silicon Valley is littered with dead artificial intelligence startups. I know that's hard to believe, but why don't we just do two? Why don't we do 2 by 2?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
All right.
So then what are some ideas that might come out of this? So for insurance, I mean, it's interesting. So I would just say with insurance, I'm not sort of in your business, but I'll just do some things that I've seen out there. So I'm not giving away anybody's proprietary ideas. But so we have teams at Berkeley live. You get a live quote. They can do non-traditional insurance. So we have a team right now that's insuring your vacations.
Oh, wow.
Like they insure your entire vacation, like when you leave, right before you leave. So
in case you get stuck in the cruise or something.
Exactly. It's like if the cruise goes off or whatever, they'll literally pay your plane fare home and everything. It's a very interesting product. But it actually has these two properties in it, interestingly enough.
Oh, wow.
Because you can get your insurance right before you leave, and you, through things like TripIt and some of these trip planning services, you can very quickly load your data into their system so they can give you a quote, right? Like it really puts these two things together.
Yeah.
So that was just like an example of they're trying to surf double trends, which can be good or bad.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else?
Come on.
Come on. We told them we we're going to add some value here.
It's just brainstorming.
How
right?
about in medical? Yeah, exactly. Remember I told you idea competitions don't work. So just telling them the idea is nowhere near enough to actually generate a business.
Yes, one of the other things that I have seen, it is the, let's say, the model of engagement also does a fair and accelerates, let's say, the customer onboarding.
Right.
So expect speed. I think that will contribute to that as well. For example, let's open it up for the public. When you hire an insurance company, let's say, what is the most difficult process when you're hiring the insurance process?
All the typing.
Yeah.
Filling out the forms.
So then information sourcing, let's say. Mm-hmm. So having that idea into mind, the information sourcing, we want to focus in regards to how do we get this, let's say, customer concern out of their radar and put it in our
right,
side.
right.
You know where I'm going. So this basically shifts the customer responsibility and just gives them a good sensation that they're feeling confident, that they're having somebody do their work for them, that is actually knowing
Taking
what they're
care of
doing.
you, right?
Yeah.
They're taking care of you. No, I like that. I like that. All right. I'm going to have to finish up here in about 20 minutes because everybody needs a coffee break. So, well, first of all, thank you very much. This is excellent. I apologize we did not get you enough good ideas, but I'll throw you some more over the break. But the more important thing, I think, is when you are working on your ideation, start to fill in these boxes with the ideas you're testing. And what I've observed is some of these boxes, when you actually go out and talk to customers and you really start to test these ideas, some of these boxes will end up being really important to people today, and other boxes not so much. Like, I thought it was interesting because you almost talked more about this than this, right? It's like, I want you to take care of me.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to re-enter stuff, all that kind of stuff. And it'd be interesting to know if you have to have both or if it's really more about this than this. But what we've been seeing with strategy with companies is that some of these boxes just end up being not important. And so when you focus on ideas and on changes, you can start to focus more of your innovations over here for purposes of testing them and sort of maybe less over here because the customers don't care, the changes aren't happening. I was lucky enough, I helped launch the first super scalable data analytics company using the Amazon cloud because I sold the company to Amazon, so some of my engineers worked on the Amazon cloud. The company was a total disaster because it was on the early days of cloud computing, and we would go to, we actually had a bunch of paying customers. We're probably doing $1 million a year in revenue, but all the big customers said to us, I will never put my data on the cloud. So we go to like big banks, insurance companies, stuff like this, and they'd be like, we will never put our data on the cloud. And I would sit, as the person running sales for this company, I would sit on the other side of the desk and just be like, you will, but this company will be long out of business before you do. So that's when we pivoted to a different company. But that's what I mean about trying to really be really conscious about your themes and trying to understand, is this really what people care about right now or not so much? And then you can start to shift and migrate.
Yeah, exactly. You know, actually, you know, in the scenario, if we would have had, you know, let's say X, Y, and Z type of ideas, then I think mainly in business, what we do is that we do a segment where we identify the complexity in regards to the, this is the complexity from easiest to hardest, and this is the impact to customer.
Yep.
So grabbing these ideas and putting them on another context actually helps you also.
It's nice too, because you can see what's easiest for you, best for the customer, and then where are you going to kind of, we call this in Silicon Valley riding the wave. Like if you get it early, you can then kind of ride the wave, and things are easy. And one way to think about that is like when the internet came along. I mean, I did 3 internet companies in 4 years, and that's because all the new customers were coming on the internet, so it was easy to be wrong. Does that make sense? Like if you were wrong, you could still fix it. Whereas if we were trying to, like, I don't know, compete with existing car companies or something, that's really hard. If you're wrong, if you can't raise a lot of money, you're going to go out of business. So one of the things you look for is where is it going to be easier for me to do it?
Yeah, so. Exactly. And you want to focus in regards to less complexity and higher impact to the customer. So
perfect.
You start to ride the wave, as you said.
Perfect. All right, Daniel, thank you so much for being our volunteer.
No problem.
Perfect. All right, so we got about 15 minutes left here. So I am going to do a quick tour of how to do this. Okay, so one of the other learnings was basically, again, you know, assume if you're trying something that's really innovative, you're really trying to get people to do something new and different, less than 10% of projects are going to succeed. if you're doing something where you already know the customer, you already know how they're going to pay you, if you're doing things that are less complicated, you're going to have a higher success rate. That's fine. But if you're really trying to sort of really change the games, and as I always said, really try to push fast, cheap, and test as quickly as possible. Okay. So let's just talk quickly about how to run the process. So I talked about customers, new customers, paying customers really being the focus. So the question is really, how do you do that? You really have to look at the whole business model. And I think Daniel was talking a little bit about that. He was talking about kind of implementation complexity and value, right? You really have to look at not just the idea, not just the customer, but everything about the business model, how you're going to get paid. And to do that, and I will warn you, if for those of you who have not been part of this, you have to get out of the building. So I talked about the program we run, it's 8 weeks, and half the people decide they don't have a good idea. We make them do 100 customer interviews in 8 weeks. And when I say customer, I mean customer, user, payer, influencer, partner, channel partner, so sort of everybody in the ecosystem. But 100 in 8 weeks. And that's because, again, it's all about customers and customer value. And you have to go at a very high rate of speed to learn quickly. See, that got some people talking. And let me just give you an example here of sort of how this works. So this was a team where they had been working in a university research lab for a year on food dryers for yerba mate tea. So this is a team from Brazil. And we said, stop focusing on your technology, stop focusing on your product, and start focusing on your customer. Are you going to get paid? So here is their journey. Whoops. If I can make it work. Oh. Okay. Oh, you know what? It's coming out of those. It's HDMI. All right, here. I'm going to tell you the story of... So there's their great food dryer for yerba mate tea. And so we made them go out and talk to customers, do 100 customer interviews. Oh, you can keep it playing. Like I said, I can dictate it. Yeah, don't worry about it. Here, you can let it go.
Hi, I'm Victor.
That's Victor?
Prime Engineering and pursuing master's degree in mechanical engineering.
Hi, I am Luis Esterna. I am PhD candidate in mechanical engineering.
Hi, I'm Daniel, and I hold a master's degree in economics. We founded Q Prime so we could bring to market innovative heat transfer technologies developed in the university. More specifically, drying machines for foodstuffs and plants. At first, we thought the most important thing would be building prototypes so we could show it to future clients. What seemed to be a good idea made us spend a whole year developing a machine for the yerba mate. Worse, we found the buying process was much more complex than we thought at first, and the market much smaller. So we had a clear problem. We have technology, but who is our customer? In the customer discovery process, we focused on extensive search of markets that had drying problems that could relate to our technology. We talked to people from several markets, from textile and pasta industry managers to small-scale tobacco and tea farmers. Our best insights came when we really went out of the building and visited the countryside to talk to the farmers. For instance, we found a coffee farmer that had created himself a quite complex equipment, spending a good amount of cash in order to solve problems that we could have solved with our technology. The most interesting discovery we've had in the Lean Launchpad program was that there were markets with a huge potential and must-haves related to our business that we hadn't even considered before. So now we are starting a customer validation process to find a product market fit for coffee beans dryers.
So this was an interesting team because it's what I see with a lot of startups is they started with a piece of hardware, and once you really put this under the lens of who's going to pay you and why are they going to pay you, you figure out it's not going to work. And they figured out, one of the things they did, I remember, they went out and did their customer interviews and they talked to these yerba mate farmers, and every yerba mate farmer, their tea dryer was 30 years old. That's not a good sign. Why is their tea dryer 30 years old? Because it's fine, exactly. It's totally fine. They don't need a new one. And eventually, by talking to lots of people, they showed it, pasta companies, everything. They ended up going to coffee farmers, and it turns out coffee farmers have a drying problem. And I don't know if you saw it in the video, but people in Brazil are building entire buildings to dry coffee. And that's because if you do a good job of drying coffee, you get a higher grade. And when the coffee is graded higher, you get paid more money. And so there's a direct correlation between how good your drying process is and how much you get paid. And that's just a classic example of, revenue, right? Of what you do driving revenue for the customer. Now, not everybody's going to have that short of a lane, but the point is if you can find it through really getting out of the building and talking to people, if you can find those kind of short distances between what you do and money, that's where you found a good idea. So don't give up on that. And in fact, if you look at why startups fail, and you probably can't read this, but interviewed 1,000 startups, why do they fail? First one is no market need. Second one, ran out of cash. Why do you run out of cash if you're a startup? That's right, no one's paying you, right? Not the right team, got outcompeted, price, basically the reason is you don't have enough paying customers, okay? And this is why, even if you're innovating within the supply chain, please, please, please focus on customers, because not really finding what we call a must-have is always the biggest problem, is you don't set the bar for yourself high enough. Does that make sense? So I'll use the yerba mate example again, which is like, if they'd gone to yerba mate farmers, I'm sure they could have found 1 or 2 yerba mate farmers who would have bought a new dryer, right? Because whatever, after 30 years, it finally rusted all the way through and they needed a new one. But clearly for yerba mate farmers, it's nice to have. They don't need this. It doesn't really do anything important for them. It's like it's fine. It's something they got to do, but it's fine. And I think what entrepreneurs do is they don't wait. They don't have the patience to run that search and keep going until they find the coffee farmers, till they find the people who are like, wait, let me get this straight. If I dry this better, I'm going to make this much extra per season. Well, that pays for your dryer the first season. Like, I'm in. When can I get one, right? And that's the difference between a startup that's weak and a startup that's successful. And by the way, if you look at startup success rates, MIT has probably the best data set on this. So companies spun out of MIT. So after 5 years of companies spun out of MIT, about 5% were very successful. So they'd returned at least 10 times the money invested in them, 5%. 15% were at least somewhat successful. So they returned at least 3 times the money invested in them. 15% were out of business. Okay, so does that make sense? 5% very successful, 15% at least somewhat successful, and 15% out of business. So that is 35%, for those of you not doing the math in your head. So there is another 65% of those companies that after 5 years, what has happened? Nothing. Well, they have managed to stay in business. They have managed to stay in business for 5 years. Now, ultimately, some of those companies may turn out to be successes, but we call those zombies, okay? And I'm sure I know that zombie movies are as popular in Mexico as they are in the US. That I know for sure, right? And so when you are working on an innovation, What you're actually trying to avoid is not that nobody cares, because you'll figure that out pretty quickly if nobody cares. What you're really trying to avoid is nobody really cares that much, and you end up being a zombie. It ends up not being important. And so the faster you can figure this out, and again, getting out of the building, talking to people, understanding their problems, who has a real problem, can we solve their problem, can we get paid for solving their problem, as quickly as you can, excuse me, is really critically important. And again, that's why I'm proud, even at a big company like Bosch, with employees who have never been entrepreneurs before, half of them figure out within 8 weeks, we're not going to solve this problem. This is not a must-have. Nobody's going to really pay us for this. This is not going to be a big business. So that's the critical part. Now, let me just wrap up here with just a couple more things here. So the other reason to get out of the building, I have to show this video, even though I'm running out of time. So this was on Saturday Night Live, right? You guys know the comedy show Saturday Night Live? So Saturday Night Live is owned by GE. And so they made this funny video about GE home appliances. So you can watch. But the thing to think about when you're looking at this video is the other reason really to understand the customer is the customer completely informs what you make. And so this is just a good example of that.
Wow-wee! Honey, how do you keep the house so clean?
A lady never tells.
A woman's work is done better with GE household appliances.
Times change, and these days, women are the primary breadwinners in 50% of American homes. And that means housework is a man's job. So give them the tools to get the job done right with GE's new Big Boy home appliances. Like the Big Boy dishwasher, featuring a 70-pound steel door.
I'd like to see a woman do that.
And hey, she may have climbed the corporate ladder, but she'll need an actual ladder to use the Big Boy washing machine, because that sucker is 6 feet tall. Dirty floors don't stand a chance against the Big Boy Ride-On vacuum cleaner. That's 240 horsepower of pure chore torque. With a detachable spot remover that absolutely annihilates stains. All GE Big Boy appliances have an Energy Star rating of F- because they run on gas. So man up this holiday season and ask your wife to buy you GE Big Boy household appliances.
Wow, how'd you get it so clean in here?
Oh, sorry, babe. The guy never tells.
GE Big Boy appliances.
Okay. All right, that's my favorite. That's my favorite video on customer segmentation. So the final thing I want to talk about is just really push you to get out of the building, understand your customers, try to get revenue from new customers, more revenue from existing customers, and again, if you're in the supply chain, that means you might have to go further up and do your customer interviews further up in the value chain of the companies that you are supplying, because you want to be part of their future. And so I just want to give you an example here of a team we had at Berkeley who did a really good job of, I call it getting upstairs. So we tell you, get out of the building, talk to customers, don't be working on your product, like understand the problem and then build to solve the problem. But then when you start to work with companies, you really have to get upstairs. And sometimes those are not going to be people, by the way, that are here. Like you may know the plant manager here, but really the question is, what's driving the behavior of the plant manager, and how could you potentially get involved in a global solution for this company? And that means you have to get upstairs inside the building. So we had a team at Berkeley that I thought did a really interesting job of this. So they actually started in the food delivery business. So essentially Grubhub, 911, all these things that sort of deliver food to your house. And they very quickly figured out that is a business where it is very hard to make money. And so being smart Berkeley engineers and everything, they created a smart refrigerator. So most offices in America, they have the potato chip machine, they have the soda machine, but for employees that want fresh food, gourmet coffee, right? Like one of the big trends globally now is people pay more for food. So companies like Whole Foods and everything, right, are doing extremely well and they make higher margins. And so they essentially went into that business. So you walk up to the Bite refrigerator, you swap your credit card, everything in there is fresh. So they have a whole fulfillment network to make sure the salads get swapped out every 2 days and everything. And they put this in suburban office parks. So they have these at Facebook, they have them at Google, biotech companies, things where they want to keep their employees around, but they don't necessarily have a cafeteria or want to have the cafeteria open 24 hours a day. So they built this very successful business that integrated a bunch of different components. And what was interesting to me about this is as part of this, they talked to refrigerator manufacturers, they talked to IoT suppliers, they talked to payments, like they talked to sort of all the people in the industry. But ultimately, they had to put this whole thing together themselves because you had to both be a good refrigerator, you had to be, you know, sort of Internet of Things and do payments, and you had to do all the fulfillment as well. Now, what's been interesting is by solving that whole problem, they have now become a private label fulfillment platform. So big refrigerator companies have invested in them, and so now they're offering smart fridges on their refrigerator platform. Cisco, the big logistics provider, is now installing these machines and maintaining them. So the Cisco, right, Cisco's that company that delivers food and everything. So Cisco's now using its logistics network to have its own private labeled refrigerators and use Cisco to fulfill it, right? So they're creating the synergies with these partners. So I just thought this was a great example of a team that kind of built something, understood the customer, added value to the customer, and now they can go back to these big companies and really be a critical part of what they're doing to generate innovation. Because I personally know all of these companies were thinking, well, how could we do a smart refrigerator? How could we, you know, do payments and all this kind of stuff? But they weren't agile enough to really solve a whole problem for a customer. Does everyone get that about this example? Is what Bite Foods did is, I'm a suburban office park manager. I want fresh food for my employees. I want my employees to stick around. I want the boss to know that I'm taking care of our employees and I want them to have healthy food and everything. That makes me look good, so I'm going to say yes to the Bite refrigerator. That's really solving a customer problem, but it brings together all these things that different suppliers were, or different large companies were providing, like fulfillment networks, smart refrigerators, all that kind of stuff. And so again, think about trends, think about customers, and think you might have to get out in front of the companies that you're supplying because you may have to build the future for them. And you're smaller and you're faster, and so you may be able to do that. The final thing I think about really trying to think up in the value chain is I know it can be hard in a supplier position because a lot of times it's about cost cutting, right? It's like, make it cheaper, make it better, you know, we're going to pay you less next year than we paid you this year, whatever it is. If you can move on to things that have higher value, and it's something you can do relatively quickly, I mean, this company is only 2.5 years old, by the way, you get to a completely different value chain. And really to back this up, large companies are looking for ways to be innovative. Almost all of them know they have to innovate better, they have to innovate faster, they have to work with their suppliers. I know with Bosch, we're running programs where they are co-creating with their business partners, right? These are things that large companies are looking for. So your timing is good, but you've got to go find these innovation efforts inside the company and try to be part of them. Because this is a big change that's happening in these large companies today, and they're not there yet. I think what we're doing at Bosch is the most advanced thing anyone is doing that I have seen around the world, and it's still relatively early days. So this is an opportunity for you by understanding that these companies are looking for innovation, they're having innovation programs, they're investing in innovation, they want innovation, and they might not necessarily exactly know how to do it. By learning about this process, by being part of what's going on here at T-Hub, focusing on customers and creating some of these new business models, you actually may help these larger companies create the future, and that means you're going to get more value out of it as well. So thank you very much. Any questions? Or I think I'm right at 11:30, so.
Muchas gracias, André, por tu plática. Thank you very much. Ahora los invitamos aquí a un pequeño ambigú también para hacer un poquito de networking. Muchísimas gracias a todos por asistir. Buenos días.